So anyway, I'm Nicole Kreiken, and I'm a bird bander at the Lesser Slave Lake Bird Observatory, and I'm going to be presenting this section on the Lesser Slave Lake Important Bird Area. So Lesser Slave Lake is the second largest lake entirely in Alberta, covering 1,160 square kilometers. The lake and surrounding area make up the Lesser Slave Lake Important Bird Area, which covers 2,000 square kilometers. It's located 2.5 hours northwest of Edmonton, and the area encompasses a mosaic of forests, wetlands, agricultural land, and residential development. There are 2 provincial parks, Hilliard's Bay and Lesser Slave Lake, and 1 wildland area along the northern shore, and then a number of urban and rural centers, including the town of Slave Lake and the villages of Wagner, Widewater, Canyon Creek, Fost, and Jussard along the southern edge of the lake. On top of residential and conservation usage, this area also supports forestry, oil and gas, agriculture, and multiple tourism and recreational ventures. The area is considered to be of a global significance for a couple of congregating species, as well as a point of congregation for migratory land birds. On a national level, it is recognized as being significant for its concentration of waterfowl. Tundra Swan are one of the species that prompted the designation of the Lesser Slave Lake Important Bird Area. Every spring and fall, thousands of tundra swans, as well as some trumpeter swans, use the lake and surrounding bodies of water as feeding and staging areas during migration. As many as 2% of the global population of tundra swans pass through the region every year. Although tundra swans are doing well now, they were nearly hunted to extinction in the early 1900s. And they are a species that is sensitive to human disturbances. Large water bodies with plenty of sheltered areas free of heavy boat traffic that can be used as resting and refueling sites are critical for ensuring that tundra swans continue to do well. Oops, went one too far. The western grebe is the other congregatory bird species that prompted the site designation. Western grebe are the largest member of the grebe family, and they nest on the shores of large water bodies that have shallow, sheltered shorelines with thick vegetation that is adjacent to water deep enough for submerged hunting. Because of their very specific habitat requirements, they are listed as a species of special concern by the Species at Risk Act. Alberta makes up 40% of the western grebe breeding range, and it is estimated that there are less than 100 breeding colonies in the province, a few of which are on Lesser Slave Lake. Swans and grebes may be the specific species that make Lesser Slave Lake area an important bird area, but they are not the only water birds that use the lake and surrounding water bodies and wetlands. Over 10,000 geese, ducks, gulls, terns, loons, and grebes breed in the area every year, and many more migrate through. The reason so many water birds are able to use the area is that it is diverse in habitat types. The lake itself has primarily rocky shores, but there are also long stretches of sandy shoreline as well as heavily vegetated and reedy shorelines. Add that to the numerous ponds, marshes, swamps, creeks, and rivers, and you have a plethora of breeding opportunities for a large diversity of birds. Water birds are not the only group of birds using the Lesser Slave Lake Important Bird Area. Every year, hundreds of thousands of land birds migrate through and breed in the area, including many threatened species like this Canada warbler. Over 250 species of bird have been recorded in the IBA, and at least 200 of those are regular occurring species, whether on migration or as breeders. Bald eagle are another species worth mentioning. Surveys of the IBA have found that as many as 80 pairs of eagles use the forest surrounding Lesser Slave Lake as breeding habitat. Bald eagle are primarily fish eaters, so they require lakes with robust population of large fish. This IBA is important for more than just birds. Encompassing 3 different Alberta ecoregions, it has diverse habitat that is home to a multitude of wildlife and plant species. As you can see in this picture, the ecoregions represented are the mixed boreal upland, boreal transition, and western Alberta upland. Sorry, just lost my pointer for a second. Due to the vast watershed created by such a large lake, the Lesser Slave Lake IBA has a diversity of wetland habitats which are important for all manner of wildlife, from birds and mammals to fish and amphibians. Within the area, you can find all 4 of the major wetland types: bogs, fens, marshes, and swamps. Wetlands support a huge diversity of birds during migration and breeding, in part because they are insect factories. Not only are wetlands important for birds and animals using them, but they are of huge global importance for their role in storing and filtering fresh water and as a carbon sink. Over 60% of the Earth's fresh water is held in boreal wetlands, so keeping them healthy keeps us all healthy. The threats to the Lesser Slave Lake IBA are not unique. Lesser Slave Lake is a vast water body with beautiful sandy shores, accessible fishing opportunities, and stunning beauty. It is no wonder that every year thousands of visitors flock from all over the world to visit it. On top of seasonal visitors, the area is home and work to over 10,000 individuals. The entire IBA faces the ever-increasing threat of human development. The northern edge of the lake is mostly undeveloped, but within the private and crown land there's a great number of oil and gas well sites and 2 major forest management areas that are used extensively for logging. The south side of the lake also supports a third industry, agriculture. Agriculture directly impacts the water quality of the lake and watershed, as runoff can carry pesticides and fertilizers into the watershed. Lastly, all along the southern edge of the lake is far more developed, and it contains marinas, campgrounds, day use areas, summer villages, cottages, villages, hamlets, and subdivisions, and there is more expansion every year as more and more people desire a hideaway from the city. All this development removes riparian and near forest habitat, which are both already limited habitats that support a huge diversity of plants and animals. Riparian plant growth is also critical because it helps to stabilize the shorelines and filter water coming into the lake. On this map, I have just used stars to show some of the more developed villages and towns, so you can see that all along the southern edge there's quite a bit of activity. With increased development, there is increased boating and recreational water vehicle use. This impacts the IBA in 2 major ways. 1, there is increased pressure on the fish stock, and 2, the disturbance caused by boat wakes can have detrimental effects on nesting water birds. So let's start with fishing. It's hard to see the colors of the dots on my maps here, but the one on the left is the historic walleye density, and it shows a dark green dot on Lesser Slave Lake, indicating very high fish stocks. In 2014, Lesser Slave Lake was ranked as having low fish stocks. If fish stocks continue to fall, it will have a cascading effect on all the birds and mammals that rely on fish as part of their diet, like the bald eagle, which are recognized to nest in this IBA in high concentrations. With boats and jet skis come wakes, and wakes can be disastrous for water birds. Although adult birds are fully able to handle big waves, young waterfowl can easily be swamped or killed by big waves, and nests with eggs are even more vulnerable. Many species of birds, like western grebes and loons, build their nest out of floating vegetation right on the water. Heavy boat traffic through an area will deter birds from nesting, and ones that do nest face the high likelihood that their efforts will be in vain and their eggs will get flooded off the nest when a boat speeds by too closely. With more and more marinas being built along the shore of Lesser Slave Lake to allow for more anglers and recreational access, the available habitat for birds to nest is diminishing. Many people think that just the habitat that the marina is on is lost, but in reality kilometers of lakeshore habitat is lost due to boat traffic from the marina. This picture provides a local example of the challenges faced in the Lesser Slave Lake IBA. This is located in Jussard, which used to hold a large breeding colony of western grebe. Not only was riparian and near forest habitat removed, but a sandy beach was created and a large marina was built. This area used to have reedy shorelines, and its location in a sheltered bay meant smaller waves. With the reeds removed for a long stretch and boats creating waves, this entire bay is now unsuitable for western grebe. When this area was first identified as being of global importance to birds, and the threats were recognized, the Lesser Slave Lake Important Bird Area was formed and laid out two main goals for mitigating those threats and ensuring the long-term preservation of this area. Firstly, to ensure long-term stability of this staging area through habitat stewardship, and secondly, to improve public knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors regarding bird nesting and staging through educational programs centered out of the Lesser Slave Lake Provincial Park. One of the key ways those goals are being met is through the work of the Lesser Slave Lake Bird Observatory. The LSLBO was established in 1994 with the goal of promoting bird conservation through research and education. It is located in the Lesser Slave Lake Provincial Park and thus the important bird area as well. The LSLBO has been monitoring migratory and breeding bird populations for over 20 years for the purpose of deriving long-term population trends for all species encountered in the study area. Data collected at the LSLBO and by observatory staff at other locations on the lake provided a lot of the baseline information that led to the designation of the IBA. Continued monitoring also supports the IBA's long-term goals. Since its establishment, the LSLBO has been operating two main long-term, broad-spectrum-based monitoring programs. One focused on the migrants and another focused on the breeders. Migration monitoring is done from the same site every single year and operates every day from late April until mid-June for spring migration and then mid-July to the end of September for fall migration. A variety of counting methods are used to encompass as many species as possible. The broadest counting method is the incidental observations. From the start time of half an hour before sunrise to 7 hours later, any bird seen or heard is recorded. Visual migration watches are the second type of count, and they are 5-minute counts conducted once an hour from a fixed point. Only actively migrating birds are counted during this count, and that gives us a good idea of the migratory window of various species. The last observational count method is the census. Within 2 hours of sunrise, a half-an-hour census is conducted along a fixed route, and all the birds encountered are recorded. The fourth counting method is bird banding, and it is only conducted when the weather is favorable for it. There are 14 specially designed nets at the LSLBO for passively catching small songbirds. They are only set if it is above 0 degrees Celsius, not raining, and not too windy. Birds moving through the forest fly into the nets and are captured. Trained staff, like me, that's a picture of me if you all are wondering what I look like, check the nets every half an hour, and then all the captured birds are carefully extracted and brought to the lab to be banded. Birds are all given a lightweight metal band that has a unique 9-digit number on it. No other bird in all of North or South America will have the same number, and so if that bird is ever encountered again, we can learn more about the migration routes and timing of birds. On top of being banded, the birds are also aged, sexed, assessed for overall body and feather condition, measured, and weighed. The band is put around the bird's leg, and all that information is taken in less than a minute. So then the birds are released and they can continue on their migration. The biometric data is very useful for painting a picture of the health and demographics of the populations moving through Lesser Slave Lake area. The program for monitoring the breeding populations of birds is called Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship, or MAPS. The LSLBO runs 4 MAP stations between mid-June and early August. During this program, each species of bird encountered is assigned a breeding status based on observations of bird behavior. On top of that, 10 nets are also used to capture and band birds to determine year-to-year return rates based on banded individuals and assess breeding success, based on number of fledgling birds captured. Monitoring the migration and breeding of birds creates a picture on how each bird species is doing in at least one section of the vast Lesser Slave Lake IBA. All the data collected from these programs is provided to the provincial and federal government to assist them in making land management decisions. Sharing our monitoring and conservation program with the public has always been important for the LSLBO. So in 2006, Alberta Parks, in partnership with the LSLBO, established the Boreal Centre for Bird Conservation, an eco-friendly education and research centre located in the provincial park. Every year, the Boreal Centre receives 5,000 visitors and delivers education and community outreach program to over 8,000 people of all ages. The LSLBO also works with other education organizations such as the Lesser Slave Lake Watershed Council to help raise awareness of the importance of healthy lake habitats in the Lesser Slave Lake IBA. If you would like to learn more about the Lesser Slave Lake IBA or come see the area for yourself, just come on up and say hello. The Boreal Centre for Bird Conservation is open year-round, 7 days a week in the summer months and 5 days a week in the winter. In the winter, you can borrow snowshoes or cross-country skis in all sizes from the BCBC to explore the beautiful Lesser Slave Lake Provincial Park. In the spring, there is always something to do at the BCBC, and there is the opportunity that you could go out to the LSLBO and see the bird banding. Our annual Songbird Festival is the last weekend in May, and I would love to meet you. So, before I hand it back to Zoe, I would just like to thank her and Nature Alberta for having me here to talk about the Lesser Slave Lake Important Bird Area. I hope you enjoyed hearing about it.